Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session in association with ILIT Corporate Club and the Department of Management Studies. Today, we'll be discussing about leadership and leading in adversity. We are very proud to have a very special person among us, and he is none other than Mr. Vivek Kalia. We also welcome our principal, sir, Mr. Debashish, and Aniruddha Kundu, and Ms. Anindita, Professor of Management Studies in ILIT. Welcome all of you in the show.
Thank you, sir.
Now, a
Good
brief
evening.
introduction about Vivek sir. Uh, he is an alumni of National Defense Academy and started his career as operational air crew and undertook mission planning and execution of airborne operations. He has also served the Indian Naval Operations as a head HR and took various responsibilities. He was also in diplomatic mission in Mauritius and was responsible for the training operations over there. Finally, he retired as a director of procurement from Indian Navy. And right now, he is serving for one of the biggest manufacturer of airlines, that's Airbus, and he's the head of business operations for India and Southeast Asia. We'll welcome you, sir, in this show.
Thank you, Bidyut. Thank you very much for the warm introduction. And thank you all. Thank you, people, the faculty and the students of ILEAD organization. I think it's a privilege and I'm humbled by this invite to be sharing this platform and sharing my life's journey and also my thoughts on the a very apt topic nowadays, that is leading in adversity. Uh, so I think though I'm not as experienced, if you say, but yes, maybe to the students I would have walked a little bit more on this earth, having born earlier. But yes, with my experience in especially of 21 years in the Indian Navy and then last 2 years in the corporate world, I would like to share the journey, and thereafter I would like to share some insights with regards to how to lead in adversity. To optimize the time, I would like to split my talk in probably three halves. One, I would share about my beginning and my journey in the Indian Navy, and followed by the transition into the corporate world. Thereafter, the main subject, that is leading in adversity, I would present that topic with the help of few examples, help of, I'll say, personal examples. One from my time in the Indian Navy, and one in the latest in the corporate stint. And thereafter, I'll share a little bit insights about some of the leadership virtues which I feel are a must-have for anybody who is in any kind of a capacity where he or she is able to lead, influence the individuals. So just to give a little brief insight about myself and how I started my journey. Definitely, I am from a middle class family. I had a very humble beginnings. Uh, so 94, I joined the National Defense Academy with an aspiration to become a naval officer. 3 years, quite a struggle in the National Defense Academy. It's not that easy. As I would say, I was pretty a frail individual, not a great physique, and not a great this thing. Normal from a civilian background, civilian life, and was exposed to the training rigors of the National Defense Academy. And I think a lot of virtues, a lot of values which an individual is required, specifically when he or she is looking at serving the armed forces, serving the nation. Those values of camaraderie, those values of putting yourself, uh, your organization, your nation before yourself, those kind of values were greatly ingrained into us, drilled into us through the actual learnings which are happening on ground. Good 3 years of learning, lot of friends. Each day was a survival mode. to survive, and thereafter we used to get homesick also, aiming to go back to home after every 6 months and to meet our parents. 3 years went off well. Joined the Navy, got commissioned in '98, and thereafter had an aspiration to become an aviator. With that aspiration in mind, I joined the aviation branch of the Indian Navy. Underwent the 1 year of training at the uh, observer school, 1 year ab initio training, a good 1 year of flying, learning about the nuances of aviation, the operation life of an aviator in the Indian Navy. Uh, Became an observer, got my wings in 2001, and thereafter I think when I was stepping into the operation role as an operational air crew on board the frontline aircraft of Indian Navy, I think I was baptized by fire immediately in 2001 December. If you know, 13 December incident had taken place when the parliament was attacked, and all the armed forces were deployed, and I was about to start my conversion onto as an operational air crew in a frontline squadron in Indian Navy in Goa, and we were deployed to the west coast to support the missions both for the army, the navy, and the air force. Uh, Learned a lot there. Spent timeless means tremendous amount of nights facing the face of the enemy. First time, was pretty young. That I think must be 24, 25 years of age at that moment of time, and so it's such a dense electronic environment to learn as in the field of electronic warfare. Uh, Spent almost a year in the front line there, uh, with so much of experience happening so fast in my to me within 1 year of joining. Within 2 years of my full stay in the squadron in the Navy, I got an opportunity and a call to become an instructor in the aviation. So that was like a dream come true, because in an instructor in aviation is amongst the cream of of the people, because you get to actually train and convert other people, and you need to get to pass on your knowledge onto people. So instructor is actually a quite a appointment and quite a position which everybody aspires to be. So did that. Went to Air Force for my instructor's course in 2003 and 4. 6 years, 6 months of quite a rigorous program of training instruct, and came back. And this time came back within 2 years of uh, becoming an A crew. I became an instructor and came back to the same school where I had done my initial training. In 2004, I was back to the observer school in Cochin, and this time in the avatar of as an instructor, and I was passing on my knowledge to the students out there. And again, I work with the philosophy of organization first, you later, and with that philosophy, I was putting in my best efforts to pass on my knowledge, my best information to the budding aviators of the Indian Navy, and continue to do that. In the whole journey of this thing, I became the youngest observer in the Navy to get a cat A rating. So that's like to be able to uh, be the best. In the pilots have got certain ratings like green, master green, where they can the best rating can land in toughest of the conditions. Similarly, for observers, the ratings are A, B, C, and D. A being the highest rating. So I was quite I think glad that I could gain that rating, and that was not only a motivation for me, but also the motivation for my youngsters. That as a lieutenant in the Indian Navy, as a young officer, I was wearing that eagle on my left side of my chest, and was probably displaying it, and it became a level of motivation for others to follow. Uh, Only thing which I would like to mention here is that not many people pursue it with the only aim being once you gain this kind of a rating, you have to maintain such ratings by giving an examination, a rigorous examination every year. these ratings expire every year, and you are supposed to score above 85% in the flying and in the ground subjects to retain those ratings. So it's a tough task, but I think the task has to be accepted to keep to keep the performance bar high. So that was good, and I think the performance was noticed by the organization, and that's when I got an opportunity to go on a diplomatic assignment abroad. This time I went to Mauritius as head of training, and that was again a 2 years assignment where I was in a semi-diplomatic kind of a role where I was training the Mauritian air crew and also as a head of training there as an instructor there. A good time, ability to interact with the multinational crew, ability to interact with the multinational people in the diplomatic channels, and also a wider exposure to me at the international arena. And also, should not miss out that yes, it was a good family time also, because a good place, a beautiful place, and working in such a beautiful place was I was able to give a decent time to my family also on the personal front. So that happened well. I spent 2 years, came back, got my first taste of the leadership this time. So I was appointed on board a frontline warship. It was a missile corvette. So 2009, 2010, I was appointed on board a missile corvette as a second in command of a missile corvette. Again, quite a tough and challenging assignment, because you may be a smaller ship, but a frontline ship having lesser resources, but having the best weaponry on board. So you are expected to deliver the results like any other big ship, but you have the resources which are probably one third of any big ship which is there. So challenges are vast, and since you are supposed to be having lesser resources, but demand of the output is same. So I think anything or everything which happens under the sun comes to your table, and you are supposed to make a sense out of it, and thereafter give directions to your men who are awaiting your instructions to take it to logical conclusion. Learned a lot there. I think part of it was a 1 year tenure. Learned quite a bit of things, whether it was with regard to operational management, whether it was man management, resources management, because as second command, as executive officer of the ship, you are also the logistics officer of the ship, so you also handle the finances, you get the first taste of it. So anything or everything from weapon deployment to the operational management, to the man management, to the resources management, and to also responsible to the commanding officer for everything of running of the ship is under your charter. So good 1 year of exposure, got a taste of everything in those 1 year, and tenure got over in 2011. Went to Staff College for higher studies, higher defense management studies. Did my masters there from Defense Services Staff College in 2011. And one year I stayed there, and this time again I think organization continued to notice my performance, and this time post the Staff College I was posted back to the headquarters, naval headquarters Delhi, this time as head of HR for the aviation. Again, it's a prestigious appointment, because in Navy you get picked up based on your appointments. You are not trained for each things like HR or procurement or this thing. You are assigned responsibilities, and thereafter you're supposed to do an on-job training and perform over it. So good. I think I was indebted to the service to give me this assignment, to be able to touch the human lives, to be able to touch the human lives positively, because you are responsible not only for the HR, you're responsible for their training, their future progression, their performance management, their billeting, which is there, and also in the policy making of aviation matters which are there. Got the best thing which happened was that HR is a very tricky kind of a thing. If you can notice that it's a very balanced kind of assignment you have to maintain, because you can make good friends also. You can make you can upset a lot of people also. So I was happy that in those 2 years I did not end up upsetting any people. I was able to accommodate the requests, and I was able to touch them with empathy and move forward. So a good thing happened. 2 years went off well. A lot of learnings again from there, and thereafter performance was getting noticed. I cleared my command board in 2000 and 2013, command of command at sea. Uh, so 2014 I was moved out, and this time as a second command of a missile destroyer on the west coast. Uh, Again, from missile corvette to missile destroyer is a size difference of 4 times, and even the manpower and resources difference of 4 times. So a huge change in the level of responsibilities which was there. So I was operating now at a theater level with the fleet of ships, and being the fleet ship of the fleet commander several times, doing planning for multinational navies, doing planning for multi-dimensional exercises, whether underwater, over the sea, over the air, and over sea, and also multi bilateral exercises which was there. So again, a huge amount of exposure I was getting, and charter was definitely, as I said, 4 times the charter of probably what I was doing on a missile corvette. But again, a great amount of learnings which happened in those 15 months of tenure on board the missile destroyer on the west coast. And this time again continued with the recognition from the organization. The best moment came in where I got to appointed as a commanding officer of my own ship, that is INS Ghadial on the east coast this time. And it's a dream come true for every naval officer to command at sea. And I think that dream had come true for me also. And again, a 1 year tenure. Here, the buck stops with you. So with greater positions comes greater responsibilities. I think that verse or the phrase from Spider-Man is very true. That lot of responsibilities, because the buck stops with you. A lot of accountability comes in, and you are the face of the ship. You're the face of the organization. The organization is known by you. So anything goes wrong is yours, and anything which goes well is for the entire crew. So you have to be the shield of the ship. You have to be the sponge of the ship, and you're supposed to be sheltering and taking over the ownership and responsibility for the ship, because what happens outside is your name. What happens inside, you are supposed to do the moderation and put the corrective action in place. So I think 1 year I got to learn a lot, both from the operational point of view, from the management point of view, how to take ownership of the decisions, how to take collective decisions, and I would say how to take informed decisions, because you have the head of departments who are reporting to you, but decision making is to be done by you. Uh, Armed forces are still not, I would say, a democratic kind of an organization, but yes, informed decision making do take place. You get input from your whether it's electrical officer, your executive officer, or whether you're logistic officer. But end of the day, the decision making is your charter. You're supposed to take decision because you're supposed to take ownership of those decisions. So I think a lot of learning with regards to informed decision making also happened, which was good. And I still hold that kind of appointment very coveted to my heart. And moving on, this time now again after the command tenure, I was posted back to headquarters in Delhi in 2016 as director procurement, as you mentioned. Again, different domain, different learnings uh, to be dealing with regards to procurement, negotiation, contracts, dealing with the future forecast, future plannings for the Navy, what kind of aircraft the Navy needs, getting into negotiations. So great learning. Life was going on very, very well. And uh, as the life was going on well, thereafter I was turning 40, and thereafter I took a conscious call did little introspection, that yes, I have given my best to the service. I have got the best from the service. I've contributed quite well, but maybe it's if I wish to reach the pinnacle of my professional career, maybe in services I may not be able to reach that, because this is a place for only for one uh, on top of the organization. It's a very, very steep hierarchical structure. So while meritocracy is there, but other factors also come in. So I took a conscious call and took my family on board. Took the decision of my family. Went back to my parents. Went back to my family, my wife, my kids, and told them that yes, I wish to pursue a career in the corporate world, and I wish to step out. Not an easy call because you have to take their opinion, because it is their lives whom you are touching. It is their you who are managing their life, being the primary bread winner of the family. So you just can't leave them in doldrums that okay, I want to pursue something but without a plan. So I made a plan that yes, if I have to step out, I have to ensure that I'm stepping out with some learnings, and then only I will be able to step out and start on a positive note. So that learning plan was made, and that is when I decided to go to INSEAD, the world's number one business school, and did my 1 years of executive general management program from there. Uh, I think a tremendous step to go to the best and learn from the best. Uh, Learned a lot about the nuances of the functional skills which are required, whether it is sales, uh, finance, corporate finance, strategy, leadership, communication, and team building. So many sides of soft skills and functional skills I learned from there, and learned a lot about networking from those cohorts, because made some great amount of friends both from the INSEAD fraternity and also from the I think the corporate world. I think corporate world was quite uh, they were accepting my journey, and they gave me an opportunity. And I think just 4 months short of my I think when I was about to hang my uniform, I got this opportunity, which is my present role is head of business operations, and this again opportunity happened through one of the alumni of INSEAD, who was the previous ex CEO of Airbus, and I think my networking abilities, networking efforts which I was putting in by interacting with people, by communicating with people, and communicating the right story to the people, happened very well. So this gentleman put my foot in the interview door, and thereafter followed the 5 rounds of interviews uh, to get into this role. And it happened, and I was happy that God was great. That with 3 months prior to my journey was going to end in Indian Navy, I got this opportunity as I had an offer letter in my hand, and that's how I stepped out, and uh, I began my career on the right note, at the right level, which I would have liked, and at the right age, I would say. I was just 43 that time, on the right side of 40s, and with a huge opportunity window ahead of me, started on a good thing, so that if you don't start well in your second career, it's always a tail chase. So I think aim is to always start well, so that you are not chasing always, and always remaining behind the curve. So I think this is what happened, and this is how my the whole journey I think went by, from starting as a young boy, going to the National Defense Academy in '94, to a mature professional stepping out in 2019, and taking a leap into the corporate world based on my own beliefs, and also my learnings, which I went to, a good decision which I took to go to INSEAD. So that's what in nutshell is about my own journey, which happened in the from Navy to the corporate world. Uh, I can go endlessly, but yes, not just to switch over to the next part of what I wanted to share is mainly because what is the topic which is there is leading in adversity. Uh, so what I would say is that any leadership or any leading assignment, any assignment where you get an opportunity to lead, is not necessarily a positional assignment. I think I would say leadership is an opportunity. Anybody or everybody gets some or the other chance to lead or display leadership qualities. So I think it is more of an opportunity, how you grab that opportunity and make it count, and make it like into actual on ground action is what matters. So I think it is what you're supposed to do in that moment when that opportunity comes to you. So that is leadership. So do not wait for a title to come against your name to be able to display the leadership. And when it comes to, I would say, leading in adversity, now leading in adversity, definitely I think that is where a little bit of, I think, the experience and having been through some kind of I think some roles and all, it does help, because you have walked that path in your previous assignments, or maybe may have come across certain kind of a thing. It does give you some kind of a learnings. So I think an experience does matter in leading, especially in adverse conditions or when adversity hits you. So I think few things which are much more required in case of leading in adversities. First of all is, as I said, is about an experience, having been through those situations which are there, having an open mind and an adaptive mind which is there, where you are able to first assimilate what is happening around you, able to take inputs from people, because you're not the end of all. You are having a certain kind of a knowledge bracket and this thing, and there are people who are supposed to complement and supplement on top of it. So taking the inputs is very important. So here listening skills comes a lot there, because there will be some of the other inputs which you may not have thought about, because even in adversity, even a leader's mind also gets clouded, also gets fogged by ambiguity. So ability to listen to people in such situations, in these situations when they are not under control, is very, very important. So leading in adversity, it does require an adaptive, agile mind, where you take inputs. Thereafter, after you have taken the inputs, you are able to sift through the inputs which are relevant, and also sift out the inputs which may not be relevant at that time. Sometimes they're red herrings. They distract you away from the right course. And so that is an adaptive kind of a thing. And agility is required so that you at least take a decision. You're not continue to procrastinate over a decision, and thereafter that moment has passed and you are already missed that opportunity, and the things have gone from worse, from bad to worse. Here I would like to while these are the virtues, I would like to cite it through two examples. One which happened with me in the Indian Navy when I was commanding Ghadial in 2016. So my ship was under refit. It was under maintenance for a long time. It was almost, under maintenance for 9 to 10 months, and I had taken it during the time when it was under maintenance. It was not sailing, and all my crew who were there uh, were new. They had not sailed on that ship at all, including myself. So a ship which is under refit, it is supposed to start and thereafter supposed to sail and become operational, and with nobody on board has ever sailed on that ship. So it was a big challenge, and I think since I was the most experienced individual on board that ship, I had to take that ownership of it. I did practice by going to the simulators to learn about the nuances of how to do the ship handling, uh, and thereafter it came a moment when we had to sail out. We had to sail out for some gun trials and some engine trials. We sailed out. It was a normal day sortie. It was a normal day mission, and we sailed out. And as luck would have it, one of our guns during the gun trials got stuck. It means the shell got stuck in the gun, and when the gun shell is stuck, you cannot enter the harbor, because the shell can misfire, and gun can suddenly fire away, and it can cause damage and loss of life also. So we had to continue to stay out of the harbor. The weather suddenly started deteriorating. It was a day mission, because in the services you're briefed for a day mission and night mission. Requirements are totally different, and the crew was mentally prepared only for the day mission. They were not prepared for the night mission. In this case, the weather started deteriorating, and we decided that we will anchor with the gun stuck. Now we decided that we will go to anchor off the Vizag coast, and the heavy rain started. We did anchor, but after some time we noticed that the anchor had started dragging because the sea had become so rough. And that's the time when I had to take a call that yes, may not be able to hold the ship in the anchored position because the sea is rough, and we had to pull back from the anchor position because we were too close to the coast that time, and we could have I could have with my decision could have damaged the ship and my crew. And that's what it happened, and we started pulling back. And when we pulled back, the one of the engines gave way because one of the fisherman's rope came into the this thing. So you have a stuck gun, you have a bad weather which is going on, and you have a rope which is stuck in your propeller, and your engine is one of the engine has seized. So with this condition, uh, in a pitch dark night near to the coast, I had to sail the ship onto full night I had to spend because nobody from the dockyard could come to support us at that moment of time. I had to hold my specialist officers together, support them with my experience as to things are under control, and thereafter for be able to sail the ship in the pitch dark night on a single engine uh, in a bad weather with a gun stuck for 12 hours, it was a Herculean task because none of the even my officers were ready for the night sortie because they had not sailed. They were sailing with me for the first time in the daytime, and then it had become a night sortie. And then finally I took a call that no, I cannot put my crew in the harm's way, and I cannot let them be doing the something which they have not been I think briefed for a night sortie. That's the time when we attempted again for going back to the anchorage position so that my crew and my officers could rest in the night and get up fresh in the morning, and then take on the challenge of getting the round out of the thing, getting the engine ready, getting the rope out of the propeller. There were enough emergencies which are taking place which are there, and we attempted again on a single engine. We attempted close to the coast for an anchoring. uh, I think I was fortunate, and whatever experience held, I was, and by maintaining my calm nerve, I was able to anchor the ship. And thereafter we were able to have everybody was able to have a good night's sleep in the night. And next day thereafter the help came back, and we were able to get enter the channel and get all the things rectified. So I think what comes out of from this kind of incident is that yes, you have to take the ownership first because nobody's prepared for it. Means adversity stuck when we went to sea. It was planned as a day mission, but it became a night mission with so many emergency happening at the same time, and you being expected as a father figure of the ship to take the maximum ownership of the things. You have to decide what is the best uh, thing to do at that moment. Take inputs from your officers who are specialists, and thereafter be able to also ensure that the men are safe, your material is safe, and your ship is safe because it's a government property where the ship it's a multiple thousand crores ship which is there. So I think it taught me a lot to how to maintain patience, how to maintain a calm head, how to listen to the people, and how to sift through as I said, through the information and make the right decisions at that moment of time. So I think since I was able to do it, it was a tough condition, but I was able to do it along with my people. It's not that I did it alone. It was done along with the people who were there, who supported me with their ideas and views, and I was able to make the right decisions at that moment of time because people were looking up to me for some kind of decision to come from me. So I took the ownership of it. The situation taught me how to take ownership of it. If something goes wrong, it is my accountability. These decisions are mine. These viewpoints may be from my officers, but the decision is mine. So if something has to go wrong, it will be my neck which will be on the chopping block, not my men which is there. So it taught me that accountability in that moment of time, how to lead in that situation which was normal but became an adverse situation, uh, just by one rope getting stuck in the propeller, the weather turning bad, and also the gun getting stuck. So that was one example which happened in my this thing career in the Indian Navy. And then as I moved on to the corporate world, I think started gaining experience, and it's going to be 2 years in August this year. I think COVID has taught another second situation which I would like to say, how to lead in adversity. Situations have changed, organizations have changed, the working styles have changed, the style of leadership has changed. Otherwise, virtues, nuances, everything remains in any professional organization, whether Airbus or the Indian Navy. Now here, what has happened is that yes, COVID has got stuck. I am looking after the training business in of Airbus in South Asia, and we have a training center in Gurgaon, which I look after the training business. Now, since I am the head of business operations, so running the business, ensuring the business runs optimally, earning the revenue, and running the business end to end is my responsibility. So I have to take ownership of it, and our entire work is happening from work from home for I will say 95% of the people. But since the business has to be run, the business is a customer facing business. uh, I did take the ownership of, yes, putting myself probably into the training center, so that our business continuity remains in that moment of time. We only probably three of us come along with our technicians and all into the training center, so that the business continuity is maintained. The customers get to see a face of leadership in the on the site, to be able to take decisions. So there is no decision paralysis in this place. So this situation is tough. Even I am as exposed to COVID as others. Even my stepping out of the home is dangerous to my family, as it is for others. So while 95% of the people are at home and working from home and ensuring the business continues from their efforts, but somebody has to step out and go and run the business. And I don't take any credit for it, but yes, people did ask me on various occasions that why do you go to office every day when everybody else is working from home. So I say that if the business is running, it is the business which is getting the customers onto our site, and it is those customers which are paying for our salaries and for every well-being effort which we are able to do it for our team members on site. Somebody has to step up and take care of this thing. If I am the head of business operations, so it is my ownership to step it there and be the face of the organization at that moment of time. So I can't be expecting to pass on this mental onto somebody else, and so that I am safe and I keep my family safe. I think I have to take a little bit more ownership on this thing, and which I have been able to take. I have been able to take more precautions I have to take, so that when I come back, my family is safe, and I don't pass on anything from me to on to my family. So I think again it has taught me a lot from my team members, how to keep them protected, how to ensure that the business keeps running, and how I am able to continue to contribute to the business, which is giving me and my colleagues their salaries at the end of the month and the increments at the end of the month. So I think again adverse situation, very very adverse situation, because so much of grief around all of us. While we are talking, I just lost one of my NDA course-mates. I just saw a message. We were struggling with the COVID from almost a month, and it's a grief every time, every day it is happening. Some or the other team member is struggling with some kind of a grief. So I think time to show that ownership, time again to show that sympathy, time to show that empathy which is there, taking decisions where sometimes you have to put the business in the back burner and put the empathy ahead of all these things. Sometimes you have to put the business targets behind and let the people go through their particular attend to their loved ones at home. So I think you have to start putting yourself into their shoes when the adversity strikes, and not just continue to chase those business targets which are there. I think I have learned that I've been able to give that freedom to my team members when they had to be out almost for a month without any leave, because somebody from their family was extremely sick, and they had to take care of those loved ones. So I think I have learned to give that space to my team members. I learned to give that empathy to my team members, and I think with that I have grown as an individual, and I think I have contributed to my team's well-being. uh, so that's what I think, that's what I would say in nutshell is leading in adversity. I think you get opportunity to do something. uh, I think grab that opportunity and use some of the factors which I've told you to deliver in adversity. And whenever you get a chance to lead, do not let go that chance, because you don't know when the next opportunity comes to you. So use leadership as an opportunity, not as a position in your for yourself. So I think that's what I would like to say, and I think I've spoken enough of the time, and I would instead of maintaining this monologue, I would leave the stage back to you, Vidyut, and to the students who have joined to maybe share their something insights, and if they have to ask me anything, I'll be happy to throw some light with my whatever humble experience which I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the sharing such wonderful things. And you rightly stated, like, this is the time we should be empathetic. We should show empathy among our team members, among the society in which we live. So that's the thing, like, we need to cope up right now. And to be very honest, like, when I was going through these posters of this webinar, so apart from our college students, so there are several corporates who also joined this show. Some are from ex Air Force, right, stationed in Bangalore. A lot of students like coming up with questions. So I'll ask them, like, you can go ahead and ask questions directly to sir. He'll be more than happy to answer all your queries.
Vivek sir, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hello, good evening.
Sir, my name is Rafael Gomes. I'm an ex-sergeant from the Indian Air Force, and presently I'm working at Bangalore International Airport. So it's first of all, like, it's really wonderful to see you and hear you, sir, and thank you for all the inputs. So as you know, sir, even I have made that shift from defense to corporate life, and there's two questions that are running through my mind. Firstly is, how do we cope with the office politics? And secondly, how do we deal with non-performing employees? So if you could just throw some light on this too, sir, we'll be very grateful.
Okay, office politics, I think everywhere it happens. So office politics happens in every department. I think aim is, I think, wherever you can, you can listen and ignore. I think it will be a better opportunity for you, because some things are under your control, some things are beyond your control. I think wherever things are under your control, and you can afford to ignore those things, please ignore. But in case you find that those things are against the value of your organization, if you feel that the kind of politics which is happening, it is to demean somebody, to put somebody down, or to do something incorrect, I think the best thing is, if it doesn't align with the values of yourself and your organization, I think best is to speak up. You please speak up and you share that thing to your next higher ups, because office politics, or any kind of politics, is going to spoil the mood of the organization. It's going to later spoil the culture of the organization which is there. So I think if it is petty, I think ignore it. But if it is something which is not aligned with the values of the organization, I think please report it. Please have the courage of this thing to speak up and raise that voice to the people who are there in your chain, maybe your HR, your ethic and compliance rep, or your manager, anybody. Please do that so that it gets noticed, and thereafter the corrective action can be took place, which is there. So I think that is one thing which I would say for the office politics. For, I think, non-performance employees, I think non-performing employees do not suddenly emerge one. If you hire somebody, I think if you've done a bad hire, then it's the hiring manager's fault, or combined with HR's fault, that you have hired a wrong person whom you did not pick it in the interview round. So it takes time for somebody these traits to be observed. So if you find that, please, I think as a manager, it's your job to continue to engage with your team members to see how they are performing. Have regular, I think, talk with them. I think both casual and otherwise talk with them and assess their performance. So don't wait for the end of year appraisal to take place. I think if you feel that somebody requires some kind of a guidance, and somebody requires more monitoring, I think do his or her reviews more often. do his or her reviews more often. That is, maybe do reviews in quarterly basis. If you find that these are smaller issues which are there, uh, take a chance and point out to that individual that okay, this is wrong. So keep giving the cues to the individual, and quarterly when you do a face to face and a formal kind of a feedback session, record that feedback session and pass it on to the employee. And I think keep doing that over the period of time, and once you are able to reach the appraisal stage, you would have done that probably 4 times formally and maybe enough number of times informally. And then I think have the courage to report that in your numerics also. Sometimes what happens is we do not show or muster the courage to put it in numerics. Means if it's a 5-point rating and let's say 5 is outstanding and 4 is above expectation, 3 is meet expectation and 2 is below expectation, please mark it correctly. Because if you don't mark that individual correctly, appropriately, and tell that individual, it's not that you mark it and then hide that from individual. Mark it, inform that individual and report it, and let that be evident in the performance bonus or in the increment, so that that individual knows that he or she has been assessed poorly, and thereafter be a partner with them how to improve them. It's not that you just mark them and then brand them as bad. Thereafter be their partner in their approach for growth. Give them opportunities, be their growth partner in that. But if you find that the things are not improving, the attitude or the aptitude of the individual is not there for it, I think take an opportunity and put the individual on a performance improvement plan which is there, and thereafter watch if the employee improves, fine. If it doesn't improve, I think the organization has various means of checking a poor performance. But I think don't rub any poor performance under the carpet. uh, Partner with them, give them chance adequately, give them opportunities by your inputs, and thereafter you are able to I think thereafter you document it, so that later you if you require to reach a retrenchment stage, you have documentary evidence available with you. That would be my insight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much, sir. It was really thoughtful, sir.
That was stated by Vivek, sir. Any more questions? Okay, I think we have one question from. Okay. Okay, your question is that my colleagues are not cooperative, then what to do? I think sir has answered this, but still, if you want, sir, you can go ahead.
So if I understand it correctly, that if your colleagues are not cooperative, what do you do? That's correct, Vidit?
Right, exactly. That's the question that's being put.
Excuse
Okay.
me, sir. Can I?
Yeah, yes, please.
So
please.
my name is Aniruddha Kundu. I am the faculty of this IIT college. So I have, along with that, I want to add another thing that, as you have said, you have the resources. Whenever you are at the field or where the resources are already limited. So along with that, along with the human resource, how we can allocate the resources, which are always very, very scarce all the time. So the leader is the one who will basically use that resources strategically, because resources, how to do that thing, and also to motivate the whole team to achieve the goal. Sometimes the goal is not very, very lucrative for the to the all the team members. So how that can happen? Is it the story or inspiring story or the incidents that has happened? Okay, and sir, I also take this opportunity to share my highest regard to the Indian Army.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you very much, Professor Imrita. Yes, I take your point. Yes, definitely. Going to the first, I think part of the question, which is there, that if people are not cooperative, I think you don't choose your team. Neither do you choose your boss, which is there. So I think you have to learn to live in an environment and see how you can collaborate. Sometimes it happens that there are people put you down. People see you as as not a member, as they don't align with this thing. I think it takes effort. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to bring somebody from a negative zone onto a positive zone. I think it takes a lot of effort because that person considers you in the negative zone. You're in the negative zone of that person. He or she is non-cooperative to you, and thereafter to bring that person into the first to the zero and neutral, and then coming to the positive zone, it takes some effort. So I think it will take a lot of engagement with that individual, whether it is engagement on the professional front, or it is an engagement on the personal front. Maybe on a casual note, you may like to break some uh, talk over coffee, or talk over some casual meetings which are there over the lunch table or something. I think you have to start engaging with an individual while maintaining your authenticity. I don't say that you please don't lose your authenticity in this thing, but I think the effort will be have to be put by yourself to ensure that there is an engagement which is happening, because don't let that individual go into the dark zone where there's no engagement happening at all. Once the other person reaches the dark zone, thereafter it's going to be no communication happening. So keep the communication channels open, keep the engagement channels open, both on the formal front and on from the casual and the informal front. And thereafter, I think what you are supposed to do is that uh, I think if an individual is sensible enough, which is there, and your efforts are genuine enough, and you are genuinely putting those efforts, I think it should bear fruits subsequently, where a person can see through that, yes, what you are doing are genuine, authentic effort. It's not that you're trying to, you're genuinely making an effort to improve. I think put a storyline, some kind of a storyline behind it, where you can probably some kind of a story you can tell. Uh, that why are you doing it. I think take it on, or take it straight away on the face value. Means don't cook or don't beat around the bush which is there. Talk upfront about the issue which is there. Ask the other individual that why this is individual is behaving like that. Seek a upfront feedback from that individual. And I think if there may be some things wrong at your end also. So I think make those improvements, and if you have made genuine efforts and improvement happen, I think the relationship will turn from negative to neutral to positive. But in case you find that there is still no non-cooperation, I think seek help from your seniors, from your manager. Maybe they can become a moderator. Maybe seek a help from your HR, or any neutral individual outside your team to become a moderator in your relationship. I think there are multiple things which are available, because again, as I said, you don't choose your teammates, you don't choose your boss. You have to learn to live with them in any organization. I hope I'm being able to answer it.
Thank you, sir, for the answers. I think we have one more question. One of our students is asking, like, her name is Kathakali Mondol. Her question is like, was there really a tough time, like in the transition from you from Indian Navy to this corporate world? Have you faced any toughest area while in this transition?
I think most tough time was, I think, the decision making to make it, because it had to be planned, because it was not my decision. I think to make my mindset first of all, because it's a total VUCA world outside. It's a total ambiguous world. You're leaving a set, a first class gazetted officer job with a set pay in your account, which is there, a very noble job, and you're going to the outside world to fend for yourself, where there are a lot of uncertainties that how will your acceptability be. So I think that decision was the most initial tough part. But when it was backed up with the planning, I think when it was backed up adequately by the planning, that what is had it has to be done. When I decided that I will be doing this journey through, maybe through INSEAD, to upskill myself and then step out with the learning, with the tag of INSEAD, with the badge of INSEAD against my name, and with my own storyline of 21 years in the Indian Navy, in all great assignments. I think people will accept me. And when I went through that kind of a plan to my family, the acceptability came. And when I was able to execute that plan uh, absolutely the way I wanted it to, I think everything fell into place. There were butterflies in my stomach also when I was going for various job opportunities I was searching for. Initially, they were not coming up, but then I think opportunities did start coming in, and the golden opportunity did come. So I think things started shaping up well. But yes, taking the initial decision and making the plan were the tough parts which are there, and not getting opportunities at the initial stage was little anxious moments, I would say. But worked out. The plan was well, and the plan was executed very well. That's why, by God's grace, I did not face a greater challenge in the transition part of the thing. Transition happened 3 months prior to the retirement also, and I think things went off well. So God has been kind to me.
Thank you so much, sir. That's really inspiring and really honored to have you today.
My take from this session, I would say, Vivek sir, like a leader always takes the ownership, but never forgets to applaud or give praises to the team members. Am I right or wrong, sir?
You're absolutely right, Vidyut. As I said, a leader is like a sponge. You have to have the capacity to absorb as much and to pass on as limited. So I think I have used this phrase earlier also, that admonition is mine, the praise is yours, praise is ours. So I think you have to have the courage to take it on face value, that yes, this was my decision and I took it. So if there's a blame, it is my shoulder, it is my neck on the chopping block, not my men which is there, because finally you have taken the decision after all inputs. So that's what I say.
Thank you. I think the Josh is high in this webinar, and I have is also heading the Corporate Relations Club. Ma'am, yeah, please feel free.
Hello, Mr. Vivek. It was great listening to you and getting your ideas and views. I have one question that which world, that is the Indian Army or the corporate relations world, which world was more challenging to you? Which was more challenging to you, and why?
I would say the in the services, definitely the challenges are much more, because it is not only because it is quite ambiguous, because what you clear your plate yesterday, there will be new challenges which will come up. My superiors used to say that which side of the bed the admiral comes gets up is the challenge comes that way. It means it is so ambiguous, you don't even know what is going to come to you. So I used to always clear up everything of mine in the previous day schedule, so that next day I don't have anything pending on the to be on my plate, because I don't know how big a challenge will come the next day and what kind of challenge is there. And also when you are in the armed forces, I think your requirement to be available 24/7 is there. I think in corporate, I think you're not expected to be available 24/7. You can always refuse, but you cannot refuse, because once you're wearing a uniform, you're wearing those stripes and stars onto your shoulder. I think you have taken that oath to serve it 24/7 and whenever called for. So I think you do not have an option to give any excuses at that time, because you did sign up for it and you did take that ownership for it. So I think the challenges are much more, and I think that feeling which is there of organization first, that in our case, that whatever you do is for the organization, your interest always comes the last. So that is kind of a thing which happens in the services. I think that's the reason there's so much of close knit. I think the people are so closely knit in services. In corporate, the people, what I find it different, though I have just spent 2 years into the corporate world, I don't find that organization first kind of a thing, that feeling for organization, that somebody will say that, okay, I stand up for my organization. People stand up for organization, but when a better opportunity comes, people that feeling fades away also so very easily. So I think that's what I would say, that that for me, even giving my 100% in the corporate world comes because I put my organization always first. I put myself in the background. I always put my organization first. That's why I'm able to deliver more than 100% in any task which I take up. So I think those are the challenges, and that is what I've learned, and I am putting it into my corporate career also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session, and I believe it was like the students really have a greater understanding like what it takes to be a leader, and you have well stated in the session as well. like what are the things like they should know. I have one small question from one of our students, Ronak Ghosh. He's stating like, from where should we start? So is that your question, Ronak? As starting is the hardest part of something, how would we start something, or from where could we start?
I think I would say that whatever you're doing, I think start with a plan. Uh, Gather the ingredients which are required for the plan, whether it is a learning journey or whether it's a journey uh, for any task which is given to you. I think work with a plan. See what are the inputs which are required. Be open in your mind with regards to inputs, whether it is coming from from somebody junior to you, somebody who is lesser experienced than you. Take inputs which are there, and do not procrastinate over a decision. If you have to take a decision and you have to work the plan, we have that decision making ability and courage to work out that plan. Because if you procrastinate, you may have a great plan, but if you don't execute it well, you may not be able to do it. So if you want to become start a career well, I think choose any course based on your strengths which is there. Once you choose your course based on your strengths, you put in your more than 100% into your into those particular whether it's a course or any kind of program you're doing. And once your efforts are sincere, definitely the results will follow. You may get a uh, not results as per your liking maybe once, but it cannot repeat again. So a very beautiful quote I shared few days back onto the on LinkedIn was when I read through a book, The Five Levels of Leadership, is that when you put in your 100% efforts with full commitment, you can be outscored, but you will never lose. So there may be people who may outscore you because they are may better intellectual than you, but you will never lose because you have put in the effort which was in your best abilities. So I think make a good plan, work on your strengths, and thereafter execute it well. I think you will get your desired end results.
So last but not the least, I would like to ask, like, do you have any message for the youth or the generation today?
Uh, I would say that yes, maintain these few qualities. I would say is that always remain hungry for more. And I will not say for the food, but yes, always remain hungry more for the knowledge, because the knowledge, the challenge, and the tasks. Because the more they say, the cried baby gets the milk. More you ask for it, more is put on your plate. So less you ask for it, less is put on your plate. A person who delivers more gets more work. Always have more work on your table rather than having less work on a table, because once you have less work on a table, you are less noticeable and you have less things to showcase. So I would say first is that remain hungry for more always, whether it is knowledge or for the tasks. Then thereafter I would say is that always remain an agile and an adaptive mindset. That is very very important, because it's a very very fast changing world which is there. Always have an adaptive, agile, and a learning mindset. It means you work on your strengths, but keep building on your strengths. If in few years of your time in a career you're not building some skills and add it onto your resume, when it comes to change a job or change an organization, you may not have anything because your resume will still look the same as probably 5 years ago. So remain adaptive to learning new skills, have that learning mindset, and be agile and nimble if you have to make a career move in that case. But yes, definitely make it on your strengths, not just because you have to make it. There has to be necessity behind it. If the necessity is growth, then you will do it. Otherwise, just don't do it because you want to do it for salary or something. So that is second thing. And third thing, I would say that always remain empathetic. Maintain that empathy, because this is one great skill which you can develop. Because empathy, that putting yourself into others' shoes, and then this thing. Because you can learn any number of functional skills in your career, but it takes a lot of time and practice to learn the soft skills. And empathy for me is the topmost soft skill which you are supposed to be having, especially when you step into the leadership role, because you are viewed for you will be taking more, almost 80-90% decisions will be the human based decisions, will be the HR based decisions rather than the business decisions when you reach the top, which is there. So I think having an empathetic mindset will give you a lot of leverage when you reach that kind of a position. So I think start building that empathy in any action which you do. And last but not the least, have that integrity and honesty to stand up against anything which is wrong. Just maintain that 3-4 key skills, which are key virtues.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I think Raphael raised your hand. Raphael, you want to ask something?
Yes, sir. One more question, sir. Sir, how do you cope up with the pressure of a deadline, especially when you know you're not going to meet the deadline, sir?
See, I will work towards the deadline. I will make my best effort towards meeting the deadline using all my resources, all my inputs which are available. But if it is humanly impossible because of various things which are there, which are beyond my control, and I know that I'm not able to meet the deadline, I would go to the individual who has set the deadline for me uh, to indicate that what are the problems which I'm facing. So I would like to approach before the deadline crosses to that individual to maybe revisit the deadline, because if I've done my full efforts, I have put in all my this thing, I've given my 100%, my team has given my 100%, and still the things are not moving. Maybe there are some more things which me and my people require. So if I've exhausted my all options before the deadline is over, I would go back to the individual and say that yes, this problem thing or this particular issue is requires some more deliberations, requires some more tasks, and you need to give me more time. So I will put in first my own full sincere efforts, all my resources into meeting the deadline. But if I feel that it is not going to be possible by any means to meet it, I will approach the individual to have a renegotiation on the deadline before it expires. But after the deadline is crossed and then you reach to the individual, it becomes an excuse. But before you reach that deadline and go to the person who has set the deadline, you are putting your viewpoints before it is crossed. But after it has crossed, it becomes an excuse. Then justifying it becomes difficult. So there are deadlines which are unrealistic, but I think give your best shot. But if you still feel that it is unrealistic and your team feels it's unrealistic, I think please approach and revisit it again, revisit the goal again.
Understood, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this wonderful and lovely session. And my take from this session as well, like whenever I have a conversation with you or any other leaders of great stature, I found that simplicity always played a very vital role. And whenever I have gone and have done conversation with you, I have seen your videos, I see like simplicity is always there. And I think that's what one thing like makes us, we can approach you. And that's the effort we can make. So thank you very much. And thank you all the members of iLead, the admission team, the corporate councils, the management team, our corporate friends, Rafael from Bangalore Airport. And I would like to call Ms. Urmimala De to say a few words in this session.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Vivek Kalia for such a wonderful and enlightening speech that he gave, for sharing his ideas and techniques on how to take decision in the most tough times of life, and how to take the accountability of everything in the most adverse times of your life. It was really a great session with you, Mr. Vivek, and it was great listening to you. And on the behalf of the whole corporate relations team and iLead, I would like to thank you for sharing all these such ideas with us.
Thank you, Urmimala. I think thank you, Vidyut, for very, very kind and generous words you people have used. I think I just been authentic in whatever I have spoken, and if it has added some value to the students and to the people who are being listening to me. I think it's I feel privileged and I feel glad that I've been able to add some value into your thoughts. So if you got some
Sure, sir.
positives,
And one,
please do use them and do practice them. I'm sure it will help you. Thank you.
from my end, I know this this kind of thought to have a session with you or to go ahead and have a learning session from you. So we'll definitely request to have another session, maybe after a certain period of time. But definitely we'd love to have you for another session as well, as and when it's required for students.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.